The Talk Station presents Faith Matters, a look at contemporary stories and issues from a faith perspective. While this is a pre-recorded show, we are interested in your ideas, comments, and questions, and we urge you to email them to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life.
And now on the Talk Station, Faith Matters.
And welcome to the program for another week here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station. I'm Ben Ball and pastor of Bar Creek United Methodist Church, and also Reverend Robert Cornegy, Associate Pastor, Chapel by the Sea, and Reverend Carl Zarowski from St. Peter's United Methodist Church as well. And good to have you with us, guys.
Good to be here, Ben.
Good morning, Ben.
Let's get into it here as we talk about certain articles that have come out and discussions of faith in the public square. And one is maybe above the public square because it's the billboard. This is a story about the North Carolina Council of Churches billboard. And it's from the News and Observer, and Abby Bennett writing says the Second Commandment outweighs the Second Amendment, thousands of North Carolina Christians or churches say. The story is about the North Carolina Council of Churches, has representatives from a number of different denominations. I think a lot of churches actually would be a little surprised to find that they're members. But the billboard says on it, "You shall not make for yourself an idol," which is from the Second Commandment, and it says it's pictured by a lot of different guns, different calibers, different styles, and a lot of ammunition on the photo. The new billboard going up along Interstate 85 I-40 near Mebane will include the quote, along with a photo of a pile of guns and ammunition. The billboard is from the North Carolina Council of Churches. It will go up this week, the council said in a news release. It will go up this week and stay in place for the next 4 weeks. Another crucial message for all of us while gun violence continues to erupt all around. The billboard is only the first of a series of messages planned by the council during the coming months. It plans to erect a new billboard in a different part of the state, regularly reminding people that there's a different way of framing the conversation. Well, let's talk about how they frame the conversation. Robert, have they conflated this conversation?
Yeah, I mean it's a category mistake, we would call it, or apples to oranges in the vernacular. But it's a clever idea. The Second Commandment trumps the Second Amendment is basically
it's good marketing.
Yeah, and as a former graphic, I guess a graphic artist is always a graphic artist.
Right. You're not a former graphic artist. You're just not. Yes,
stuck with it.
But from a design point of view and all of that, it's clever, but their theology is terrible because look, guns can become an idol. Anything can become an idol.
Yeah.
You ever, March Madness becomes an idol. Mm-hmm. And in the churches.
Yes, it does.
Christians are not immune to this stuff. So we really, okay, all right.
All sports and hobbies, by their definition, almost can take over your life.
Anything you put before God, which is the first commandment, you'll have no gods other than me, and you're not going to make an idol to these other gods, and don't even make idols to me, is what he's saying. And I liked what you said earlier, Ben, that many churches can become, or denominations can become an idol.
Yeah, we probably have all had people, even in our own churches, who put their church work became an idol, not their faith.
Right.
So,
and family, for pastors, it's real easy to get into that. And our family time can suffer because we're idling, the church or the members or whatever it is. But about the guns, look, these are tools.
As in all the other, many of the other things you mentioned.
Yeah, that's
similar
right.
idea.
They're just for our use. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, for a Christian, can a Christian own a gun as a tool of defense?
Sure.
Without it being an idol. And so that's
and they use it own it as a subject for sport without it being
exactly for target practice. I mean, there are a lot of sports people that the only time they fire their guns is at a gun range. Others are out in the rivers and sounds hunting duck.
Yeah.
I mean, there are lots of different ways to use this particular tool. The problem is when a criminal or a crazy gets hold of it and uses it inappropriately for other means, and they always say that they're going after the Second Amendment. There is a line in there that says, "Oh, but we don't want to
repeal it.
We don't want to repeal the Second Amendment." Yes, you do. Just don't hide your agenda. That is just so obvious. Anybody can see this where you're coming from. So just be honest about it.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think, isn't it, Carl? That there's a disingenuous nature to this. That they want to, like you cannot speak against the Second Commandment. So you must, if you're not going to speak against the Second Commandment, then you must be on our side.
Right.
That's the illogic.
That's right.
But by using the Second Commandment as an argument here, and the fact that the newspaper wants to talk about this particular aspect of the argument, doesn't this same newspaper want to quiet the voice of the church? Mm-hmm. But yet they want to use some of the teaching of the church to help push their agenda. Okay, and I find that problematic. Now, if it was up to me, and I were to say, okay, let's look at what the Ten Commandments say about gun violence, I would be more likely to talk about thou shalt not murder than thou shalt not make an idol.
Create idols, right.
Okay. And, when we look at the commandments, one of the ways that I've tried to teach this is that God was telling his people, if you are in a proper relationship with me, if you are living in covenant with me, this is what your life looks like. You don't make idols. You don't commit murder. You don't commit adultery. You don't bear false witness. Not that he's saying you have to do these things to be with me. He's saying if you are with me, then this is what your life looks like. This is what our life looks like in community. The problem is we have so many people outside of that community who violence and murder don't seem to be a big problem for them.
I really like the way you phrase that, because they're presenting this as a prerequisite for a relationship with God rather than a consequence
Right.
of a relationship
Right.
with God. Mm-hmm. That you're
If you're in that
this will
relationship,
flow
you're going
out.
to rethink those things
Exactly.
that were once important.
Right.
to
That's
you.
right. God will lead you into each one of these areas.
Right.
And deal with you on these areas. If you are putting up idols, he's not going to let you alone on that.
No.
Because
no.
if you're claiming his name, if you're saying, I'm one of you guys, like we do, we are Christians, and that's that sanctification process.
Yes, it is.
And that he takes us step by step through this process. He's diligent, he's faithful, and he keeps going until we deal with it.
Right. And you enter into that right relationship with God through faith in Jesus Christ. And then you begin to become transformed into somebody whose life looks like that.
That's
You
right.
don't tell lies. You honor your mother and father. You don't want what is not yours.
Yeah.
Okay. And I truly believe that if more people got into that relationship with God, then we would see less of this violence that we're seeing in the world.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Okay?
that's exactly right.
Cain and Abel, Cain did not have a gun. We don't know what he used, but he used something to kill his brother. That was where the violence started.
Right.
And that was it. I mean, Let's also look at this in another direction, as we often look with people who want to, raise certain legislation or certain policy changes. It says, what are we saying here? Are we saying that if we banned guns, if we did that, then we are honoring the Second Amendment? I mean, the Second Commandment.
Well,
that
if we're going to do that,
that wouldn't accomplish that.
No, of course not. No, and they're missing the whole point of the problem. The problem is a heart issue.
Exactly.
Right.
It's not
a heart issue. It's not a weapon issue.
Yeah, it's not a tool issue.
No.
I mean, if you can't have a gun, you're going to do. I mean, they've already shown that more people are killed with knives. You know what they're doing in the UK now? Mm-hmm. You know, they ban guns, and so they can't get. It's really hard to get a gun in the UK. So what do they? You get a knife, and so I mean, they're slaughtering. Using her hyperbole.
Right.
You know that it's just erupting everywhere around us. Well, okay, wait a minute. That you're demagoguing right there. But other than that, but so you're gonna. The problem is the heart. Mm-hmm. It's not stuff that you have. And the other problem is they're conflating having a gun with death. That it takes power over you. It not only you can make it an idol, but it has an influence over you as well.
Right.
And that you are, we need to get rid of them because they're wicked. Well, no, they're not.
They're evil in and of itself.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And so many people use these things for defensive purposes to protect the innocent.
We'll have more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station. I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Robert Carnegie and Reverend Carl Zarowski. We'll have more in just a moment. And welcome back to Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Carl Zarowski and Reverend Robert Carnegie, as we take on another topic in our program for today. And this one is called Red Letter Christians Redefine Christianity. It's from the Faith column from PJ Media, written by John Ellis. And it starts off with Tony Campolo, Shane Claiborne, and other Red Letter Christians recently held a 2-day event called a Red Letter Revival. Unlike the church's great revivals of the past that called sinners to repentance and faith in Jesus, the Red Letter Revival's objective was to protest toxic evangelicalism. To put a finer point on it, the Red Letter Christians believe that if you're a conservative Christian, you're toxic. Religion News Service reports that during the event's version of an altar call, Campolo asked, "Are you ready to say that I'm going to commit myself to Jesus? I'm going to be committed to the poor. I'm going to stand up for the refugee. I'm going to speak for those who feel oppressed by our society." Referring to themselves as evangelicals on the margin, Red Letter Christians treat the Bible as if it's a buffet. They take what they like and ignore whatever they don't like. In doing so, they've constructed a new false religion and yet retain the word Christian in the title. This is obviously an opinion piece from John Ellis. Carl, this is something that is not new. I mean, this is really an age-old issue with people who want to take from the Bible the things that fit their worldview.
Sure, and we talked about this the other week. There was an article on the Babylon Bee, which I must tell everybody, if this is the first time you're listening, it is a satire site. Okay?
Yes, that's right.
But there was an article about a new version of the Bible coming out that had perforated pages in it, so that if there was something in the Scriptures you didn't like, you could just pull it out.
Yes.
Okay. And, it doesn't work that way. And we were just talking in the last segment about the Ten Commandments. Okay. If you have a red letter Bible, where are the Ten Commandments?
They're not red letter.
You don't have it there. Okay. You have a lot of teachings of Paul that would then be taken out of the Scriptures. Okay. Because they make some people uncomfortable. Okay. Paul's writings were canonized along with the rest of the Scriptures. God speaks to us through that. And I guess if all you can look at is the red letters, then all the three of us need to do on Sunday morning is get up, stand behind the pulpit, pull out a red letter Bible, read those parts, and sit back down, because what we have to say to help explain it is unnecessary.
and toxic
and dangerous.
and
yes,
toxic.
we're
Yes.
poisoning people's minds.
Yeah,
Again,
I-
that's satire.
In my mind is this. You remember the Phil Donahue show?
Yeah.
And I don't remember who he was interviewing, but someone asked him, it was this hot debate about this kind of theological stuff. Donahue, I believe, is a Catholic. I'm not sure. But anyway, somebody asked him, well, how do you describe the New Testament? And he said, basically, it's the four Gospels.
Yeah.
He had eliminated. I mean, he described it. It may have been the Bible. Described the Bible, the Holy Bible, and he said basically it's the four Gospels.
Well, there is some red lettering in Revelation.
There is. I know it. But I don't think he was hanging on the red letter thing. He probably didn't have a red letter. No. I don't know that he cracked the Bible, quite frankly. But and all you Donahue fans, write Ben if you have a problem with that. But but what he was saying was he had kind of cannibalized the Bible. He eliminated the Old Testament completely, and the only thing he kept was the four Gospels of the New Testament. And if it wasn't in there, it really didn't apply. And that's kind of what these guys are doing. And you can always tell. We talk about it a lot, and the Scripture says, "Be careful, be careful." Because there are going to be people out there that have the form of godliness, but they deny the power thereof. I love that. What does that mean? So there are all these phony people out there. It's a false gospel they're presenting. They have the form.
Mm-hmm. Looks good.
Looks good. They go
good.
through all the rituals. They do all the stuff. But it denies the power of the gospel, and it's infiltrated our churches. Mm-hmm. And we have to be so discerning to understand what we're talking. Tony Campolo, I mean, he went off the rails years ago, and moved into this kind of. They're all moving towards universalism. We were talking about that a little earlier. Mm-hmm. That everybody gets saved, that nobody's messed up, that all of this is taken care of, and that you're going to get there. Don't worry about it. Just make sure you do the right things. And the right things, according to them, are basically the liberal progressive agenda, whatever that is. And it's that justice thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And with the teachings of Jesus, does he teach us that we need to love one another? He most certainly does. Does he teach us that we need to reach out to the poor, to the underprivileged? Yes, he teaches that. Does he teach us that we should make sacrifices on our own to make life better for other people? Yes, he does.
Clothe the naked, visit the prisoners.
But he also tells us that we need to repent of our sin and return to God. And when we do that through faith in Christ, he transforms us into the people that do those things. We are not doing those things to earn God's favor.
Right.
God gives us his favor as a gift through Christ. We have to accept it. And in order to accept it, we have to repent of our sin. Then we are made into these new people who do these things.
Yeah.
This is when I was saying this was nothing new. This goes back actually in part and probably further to Thomas Jefferson, who took a version. He took out all of the miracles of Jesus, only left in the philosophical sort of side of Jesus. And he said, in fact, his first book was called The Philosophy of Jesus of Nazareth, completed in 1804, but no copies exist. This is from Wikipedia. The second, Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth, was completed in 1820. And its subtitle is The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth, extracted textually from the Gospels in Greek, Latin, French, and English. Excludes all the miracles and most mentions of the anything supernatural.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and this is what this goes along with what you're saying, Robert and Carl, both, is that this speaks to what we should do.
Correct.
Not who we should be.
That's right. And that was at that time that it was growing. This age of reason was developing. So we were seeing this worldview shift from the kind of, the pre-modern to the modern, and there were several philosophers that were pushing this agenda that man has the capacity to perfect himself, that we can achieve righteousness.
And we can't.
Well, no, of course we can't. So Jefferson was a deist. That's different than a theist. They're two different things. And a deist believes in God, deity, believed there was a God. Now, he never really was clear about who Jesus was. He thought he was just a really smart guy. I mean, that's kind of in that worldview. But, and so he, there could be no interaction between this deist being into creation. And of course, as theists, we don't believe that. We believe that God does interact and that he is a part. He created it. He is not it. It's distinct from him. He exists outside of time and space and matter, but he does interact with time and space and matter, with us and his creation. And so that's where Jefferson got it wrong. And he was influenced by some of the European philosophers of that time.
But
But they all believed in God. There were no atheists there. See, that's the difference. I mean, well, Paine, kind of pushed it a little bit, but they basically all believed there was some being outside of creation.
Well, see, but a lot of this, and a lot of where our own Christian churches fall, is that we don't start from ourselves as being sinful beings.
No, that's right.
We don't start from our fallen nature. And this article says, because red letter Christians refuse to acknowledge humanity's greatest problem, the red letter revival failed to hold out the hope of the good news of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Failing to call sinners to repentance and faith in Jesus makes the claim to be a revival laughably dangerous, according to this writer.
Well, if we can perfect ourselves, Jesus didn't need to die on the cross.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why he was the only one that could do that. He was untouched by sin.
Right.
And his wounds, his death, he defeated sin on the cross. He was the only one that could do that. We couldn't do it for ourselves.
And because he did that, we can now begin to live into what we were created for. You go back to the story of creation. What was the man's job? It was to take care of creation, to be a steward of all that God had created.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't do that as long as we've got sin separating us from God. And through Christ, that barrier between us and God can come down. We then exist with God in his creation, and we get to live the lives that he created us to do, and then creation will be taken care of. The poor will be fed. The naked will be clothed. Because that's our compassion for them is going to be the same as the compassion for Christ when he was on the cross.
The extension of their argument is that if we all just do these good things, then Christians can relax. They won't have to worry about repenting.
Exactly right.
They won't have to worry about their sin.
Well, we talk about it all the time about who influences the other the most. Does the society influence the church, or does the church influence society? And so what we're seeing is, these guys have been obviously influenced by society, because that's the natural man philosophy.
Reverend Robert Corrigan, Reverend Carl Zarowski, and I'm Ben Ball. We'll be back with more here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station. And welcome back here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Robert Corrigan and Reverend Carl Zarowski, as we take another stab at one of the articles that have been out this past week, and the discussions have been going on for a couple of weeks now about a bill that's before the California legislature. Not the first time, guys, that we've come with a bill before the California legislature. It's called Assembly Bill 2943. And from CP Politics, that's Christian Post Politics, a law firm is warning that a newly proposed ban on sexual orientation change efforts therapy making its way through the California legislature may threaten religious liberty. Last month, Democrat Assemblyman Evan Lowe introduced Assembly Bill 2943, which labels conversion therapy a fraudulent practice in California. Also called reparative therapy, or SOCE therapy, conversion therapy seeks to help an individual change their sexual orientation from homosexual to heterosexual. Matt Sharp, attorney with the Alliance Defending Freedom, told the Baptist Press in a statement published Monday that AB 2943 could be used to go after pastors who oppose homosexuality. It could be a violation if a pastor encourages a congregant to visit the church bookstore to purchase books that help people address sexual issues, because perhaps including the Bible itself, which teaches about the importance of sexual purity within the confines of marriage between a man and a woman. Carl, I know you said you had read the legislation here. Tell us what this is about here.
Well, of course, it's all written in legalese, so it's difficult to discern all of it. But it looked to me like this was a bill that regulated commerce more than anything, and that if any kind of counseling is done and there is a monetary transaction between the counselor and the person receiving the counseling, that's what this is trying to prevent. Okay, cool. And I don't know if it was this article or the other article we had where it talked about that if somebody is a regular tither to the church and then the pastor offers them counsel, well, that makes it look like people are paying for the counseling that's coming from the pastor. And if somebody comes in to me for counseling, I don't see it as a financial transaction in any means. No, this is part of the job I do. But I can see where somebody could say, oh, wait, no, they paid money. You're paid by them. You are their counselor, so you are their paid. This is a paid counseling session. But I don't view helping people that way.
Yeah, so they made a contribution to the organization, and the church.
And it is not required by the church.
And you're an employee of the church, therefore you are compensated by those funds go into this general pool. Yeah, it's tortured. It is very tortured logic, and I'm hoping that the Alliance Defending Freedom is picking up on that, because they're the group that's trying to fight this.
Right. And now they do mention in here that if the pastor said, well, go to our church bookstore and buy this book. Okay, I could see where someone could conflate that in a courtroom argument and say, oh, yeah, see, the church is benefiting from this.
But would you do that in a counseling session?
No,
you give them the book.
I'd give somebody a book.
Yeah, give it to them.
Give them the Bible, you give them the book.
Yeah, have I ever told somebody, well, you need to go buy a Bible and read it? No, I'm going to find one and give it to them.
That's right.
I'm not going to charge somebody for the gospel.
Yeah, they're forcing this thing into a real narrow set of structure.
But Michael Brown also speaks to, and we've quoted him many times here, but he also writes another op-ed in the Christian Post, talk about this shocking "you must stay gay" bill, is what it says, is that he says that this bill also has a broader application too. He says that it would apply to a 14-year-old girl who's raped by her uncle at the age of 8 and now feels repulsion towards men and attraction towards women. If her parents stood with her and wanted to meet with a trained counselor to help get the root of her attraction, to some states that would be illegal.
Not just to provide the counseling service, but to receive the counseling service would be illegal.
No professional counselor or therapist or psychologist would be allowed to help her.
Right. But I think in the California bill, it also says that you cannot solicit help.
Right.
You can't it's illegal to receive it because they've declared it now fraudulent.
Right. So this would be fraudulent care to either seek it or to provide it.
Yes, exactly. So you have no option. You have, that's why he said you have to stay gay.
Well, he was talking about some laws that are already existing in several states. And then he says California wants to take this one dangerous step further by making it illegal for anyone of any age to receive such help. Defies all logic, can only be seen for what it is, a frontal assault on our freedom to self-determination, a frontal assault on our freedom of religion, and a frontal assault on our freedom of conscience.
Okay, but then, if you have an 8-year-old boy or a 9-year-old boy, and they say, "Well, I really want to be a girl," okay, you can. I guess in California, you can go and you can get them help for that. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, isn't that? But isn't that self-determination? Mm-hmm. Okay, and so it's okay for that child to determine, yes, I want to go this way, but for another child to say, I don't feel right in my body, then it's not okay for that.
Right. That's right.
So it's a very one-sided picture.
That is that again, we keep coming back to these hidden agendas that they do, and this is how hard, why it's so difficult to fight through these things, is because they really never show all their hand. They just show part of it. And it's, to us looking at this is so discriminatory. I mean, this takes the parenting right from the parent.
Well,
Yes,
even
it
adult
does.
self-determination
and
takes
shifts
it
it over to the state.
Yeah.
The state has now taken control of your child's sexual development, and it's really not the child, because the child really doesn't have a clue. That's why we don't let 8-9-year-olds vote, is because they can't make these kinds of rational decisions, but they're arguing that they can, and that's, I tell you, this is coming to a public school near you soon, because really this is what we're talking about: sexualizing the basically primary and elementary level kids, so that they can go wherever they want to go. It's just unbelievable what's going on. The consequences of these things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Michael Brown again writes that while California seeks to pass this monstrous legislation, it has no problem backing a psychologist who will help a man embrace his alleged male and female identity simultaneously, or a counselor
bisexual
who will help someone embrace their alleged animal or alien identity. All that would be fine, but to help someone be at home in their own body would be illegal.
Yes.
It just doesn't pass the common sense test at any level for any faith.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
That's why ideology is so dangerous. It's all presupposed on other positions.
Right. But there's another issue here, and that is that I am certain that there has been some a conversion therapy done by clergy that was done very badly.
Oh no!
Okay?
Yeah, of course we have. It was in the roll up in the carpet thing. So, yeah,
right, and so
awful.
the public has been given this this picture of clergy as being, oh, well, you just pray away the gay, okay, and that's not what we're saying, okay, and this legislation is a real slap in the face of the church, saying, see, the church is evil. You see what they have done? We are the state. We can help you. We can give you a better life. We can make you happy.
Well, and it goes to that other bigger umbrella thing that we've talked about before, is that one sin committed by, and we start again from the basis that we're all sinners, but you take a sin committed by a preacher somewhere, and then it is applicable to all of Christianity.
That's right.
Or to all of faith. And it may be the same for other faiths too.
That's hard cases make bad laws. Mm-hmm. That was the whole argument behind Roe v. Wade. You always see this coming up. They take the hard cases and they try to make a general law out of it. A one size fits all. And then everything is lost. Everything is lost. And so, what we're going to see, the prediction is that if this goes through, the really frustrating thing for me in that line of if this goes through is that the Supreme Court keeps turning down opportunities to get involved in this because of precedent. They've already made the decision. And so based on that precedence, they are saying, no, we can't go back because we've already said this is okay.
Well, they also know that California is only going to be part of the United States for another couple of years.
Yeah.
And so,
that's
you know,
right.
they just don't have to
So
deal
it's
with
either
California.
going
That's the
to
other story. That's another
secede
story.
or reseed, one or the other.
But
I'd like to, even though I'm not even going to say that.
But however, like was being talked about here, is that there are a number of states that have already adopted medical fraud rules that would seem to prohibit somebody, you know, that would say that you're trying to practice medicine if you're trying to convert somebody's sexuality, or to have them not be expressive of their own sexuality in their own bodies, or trying to help them even if they ask for it. There's already considered medical fraud.
I'm never going to try to convert somebody's sexuality. That's not my job. My job is to help people develop a relationship with God, to enter into a relationship with God. And then God can take care
Right.
of what they're like on the inside.
Right.
That's it.
There you go.
It's not my job.
More to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station. I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Robert Corrigan and Reverend Carl Zarowski, and we'll have more in a moment. Welcome back to the program here on Coastal Daybreak. Bound to do that at some point. On Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben. I'm not going to start it over. We're just going to keep on going. And with Reverend Robert Corrigan and Reverend Carl Zarowski. And this is we've had a debate over which of our articles today were going to be the sign of the apocalypse. Because, don't you agree, we could have probably
They were all
chosen any of
contenders,
them.
I
They
tell
were
you.
all contenders there. Okay, so our SOA today, though, is from The Stream. It says, "We loved each other so much, we're getting divorced." And the quote is from Chatham Tanning and Jenna Dewan. I don't know how you say that. But anyway, both actors. And they said, "We have lovingly chosen to separate as a couple. We fell deeply in love so many years ago and have had a magical journey together. Absolutely nothing has changed about how much we love each other. But love is a beautiful adventure that is taking us on different paths for now. So there are no secrets or salacious events at the root of our decision, just two best friends realizing that it's time to take some space and help each other live the most joyous, fulfilled lives as possible. We're still a family, will always be dedicated parents to Everly, their child, Chan and Jenna."
Magical. It's just magical.
Hallmark. Hallmark couldn't have written it any better, right?
Yeah, I just threw up a little bit in my mouth. That was so touching.
That's the first time that's been said on this show,
I
isn't it?
think
It's
so.
not the first time it's happened, I don't think, but the first time it's been
I
said.
mean, kind of every
certainly by our
every
listeners either.
segment today has been one of those.
You know, we were talking earlier about creating idols. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm not even going to get into the Hollywood idols, okay? But I'm going to talk about this couple idolizing the idea of love and a magical relationship, you know. And I will give them this. It could be that their publicist said, this is a good thing to put out there because people don't need to be digging into what's really going on. Okay. Because if two people really are in love with each other, then why are they choosing to go separate ways?
Yeah. Well, you know, isn't it fascinating that they have no concept of biblical love? They're talking about human love, basically, and that's a very selfish thing. You know, it's you meet my needs, I meet your needs, and you know
right.
We're happy.
and we're happy, but we're obviously there's something wrong here because we feel like even though we have this wonderful love. It's a decision they can make, and they made no vow before God. That's why we encourage people to understand that there's another partner in your marriage, and they have no, evidently, concept of the presence of God. And that if you don't understand what godly love is, biblical love, then you say stupid stuff like this. I mean, you know, that's what it comes down to. It's a very, very selfish concept. And when we go through that wedding ceremony, there's a purpose in that.
Mm-hmm.
We are constantly reminding them that this is a promise they're making not only to each other and to their families and their friends, but they're doing it before the living God and inviting him into their relationship.
Think about the biblical history of divorce, and you come up with the same thing. It was entirely selfish.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of going to Moses and say, "Look, we really still need to have divorce here," and God basically saying, "Look, I don't like this, but if you're going to do it, here's how you got to do it."
Right.
So, but it was a very selfish thing to ask of God.
Right.
Is help us find a way to have this happen. And so what they're doing, this couple, again, celebrity couple, and this article is an article against this idea in the Stream by Jennifer Hartline, and in it she writes about what vows, what for. This is also a warped and empty view of marriage. Marriage in our society has been reduced to simply a celebration of feelings. It's only logical that marriage can end when those feelings change. The linchpin is still my happiness. So if marriage is no longer serving my happiness, then it's time to take it all apart and move on.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the societal view now. And even when they're saying that they're wonderfully well together, they're apparently not so wonderfully well apart because they're saying that's taking them on different paths.
Right, taking them apart from one another. I had a professor at Duke who talked about marriage in class, one of the subjects we covered, and he asked us what was God's purpose for marriage, or why should people get married? Okay, and his answer to us, which made a lot of sense, he said, God's desire for each of us is for us to grow closer to Him, and you get married to somebody else because together the two of you can grow closer to God than you could if you were apart. Okay, and that is a very wonderful biblical view of marriage. You know, my wife Cheryl, she and I were both Christians. I'm trying to grow closer to God. She's trying to grow closer to God. Together,
that's right.
We do that as a team, as one. You know, the two shall become as one, and that's
exactly right.
That is what has happened with us. Now, if I sit down with a young couple who's going to get married and they're in their 20s, and we start with marriage, the premarital counseling, and I say, here's the purpose of getting married. You know, you want to grow closer to God, you want to grow closer, the two of you together can grow better. And they look at me like, what?
What?
That's not why we want to get. No, actually, they nod their heads and they go, yes,
that's right.
But,
when's the party?
You know, when you're in your 20s, that's not what you're thinking about with marriage. And so I think as the church, we have an obligation to do a better job of teaching what biblical marriage is.
Because many in our church are more closer to divorce than they are to getting married.
That's correct.
So we need to step up. I think you're exactly right. You've inspired me there,
And,
Carl.
and look, I could be viewed as a hypocrite here because I don't know, what the status is of everybody in here, but I've been divorced. I was married for 12 years and got divorced, and then I got remarried. And in this second marriage, I have grown as a Christian. Before I got to this second marriage, within this second marriage, I've grown as a Christian, and I have a clearer picture of what is involved in a marriage.
You know, it's fascinating, and I like the way the author of this goes into it. And she talks about what the reality of divorce teaches us. Mm-hmm. And what she says, it teaches us that, because that's what they're doing. They're getting ready to divorce each other.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so she says, it teaches us that love ends. You can love someone today and not love them tomorrow. Love sometimes means you leave the person you say you love because it's better for you. The journey is magical, but only for a while. Nothing is secure or dependable or lasting.
But see, what needs to happen is you've got to have growth in a marriage. Okay, as I grow closer to God, as my spouse grows closer to God, I hope that we're doing it together, because then we're going to grow closer to one another. And when divorce comes, it's because people have grown apart from one another.
Well, and they've also grown apart from God.
Yes.
Right, and they've
Because
grown apart
God,
from God.
is the source of love, true love, biblical love. And so that sure, things happen in relationships, but as believers, what we're called to do is to go back to the source
You know, there was a
and appeal to the source for help in this process.
we
have a partner in this process.
absolutely. We started this show with a segment about a billboard. You remember the billboards that also went out. There were some that one had said, "Thanks for inviting me to the wedding. Now invite me to the marriage."
Yeah.
God, you know, it was the idea is that, okay, we give him a nod at the wedding. Now we have to make sure he's included in the marriage. Right. You know, even for this, you know, we all remember things that we've read. And I just remember something I read as a kid when probably because my mom subscribed to Good Housekeeping and it had "Can this marriage be saved?" was a column there. And one of the things they gave was a questionnaire one time. And one of the questions was, and I probably prepubescent child who was thinking about a girlfriend at the time, and it said, do you think as much about this person when you are apart as you do when you're together? I thought that was pretty wise, because if you truly love somebody, you think about them when you're gone and when you're apart from each other as much as you do when you're together. And this couple is saying, this celebrity couple is saying that we have it's taken us on different paths for now.
Yeah.
They're saying that they cannot do that.
Yeah.
They cannot love each other as much apart from each other as they can when they're together. Everything's going to be magical, and when they're apart, they're going to be on their own lives here. Somebody else.
I will say I have a wonderful, wonderful marriage. Okay, if I counted on every day being magical, it's not going to be a very realistic view of life
Insert laugh
with
track.
another person. Okay.
right.
And, you know, I cannot imagine my life without my wife. That's the way marriage should be.
Yeah, it is, and we all too often take that for granted, that it's all going to be magical and wonderful all the time. Thank you for joining us on Faith Matters here on the Talk Station. Thank you to Reverend Robert Kornke and Reverend Carl Zarowski.
Thank you for joining us for Faith Matters. Email your comments, questions, and suggestions to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. Give me faith.
Faith Matters is a production of The Talk Station.